I came up with the idea a few years ago to measure misery. Misery of a fan base. Misery that you as a fan say, you know what? I feel pretty miserable. And then I can make up a chart and go, yeah, no, yeah, you're pretty miserable. And you can go, thanks. I guess I feel better now. So the idea of measuring misery is really pretty simple. And it depends on your idea. So there's the, all right, well, there's differences. So there's the failed expectations, right? So maybe you have a team that's supposed to be a Stanley Cup champion and they get eliminated in the first round. Whoops, that kind of thing. But for me, there's the day-to-day misery too, and I think that's something that I haven't been measuring. And so I've already done misery indexes a few times, and I've seen misery indexes elsewhere since I started doing them, which is fine. And I'm not saying that I invented the term because I'm sure there were other misery indexes before I came up with it. But day-to-day misery, I think, is the ultimate graph. That would be the ultimate, wouldn't it? So my idea is pretty simple. I start watching hockey during the 1980-81 season. That's where I come in to start watching. My misery or happiness starts there. Now, I think it would be interesting to have that measured out for the team that I cheer for most, which is not the Atlanta Thrashers. It's the Vancouver Canucks. Completely unrelated. I threw a Thrashers jersey on for this. But the idea would be simple. I'd be measuring losses. So losses. But there's more to it than that when it comes to misery, right? There's, I don't know, let's come up with something random like blown 3-goal leads. Just as something random that might happen. Not very often, but it does. Another one. Blown third period leads. Losing by 3+ goals. And then there might be cumulative ones as well. Like, for instance, say, maybe you get bonus points for a 5-game losing streak. But there has to be the positive as well. There has to be a reset. And if I'm going to do this for every team, and I'd like to, and I'm being honest here, I would like to do a misery index for every team and measure it out. Not over the last 100+ years. I apologize to Toronto and Montreal fans. Not doing it. I know those seasons were shorter, but I'm not going through every single game. But with Hockey Reference, you can go through the scores of each game. You can go through the summary of each game, and you can find blown leads. You can find, and there might be reasons to maybe drop points. So maybe you drop points for winning streaks. So just winning in general would drop your misery. So let's say I give you, let's say Vancouver blows a 3-goal lead, and I say that's worth 3 points. They win the next game. All right, that's a -1. So now they have 2 points. They have 2 points on the misery index. So you're happy with the win, but see, that's where it comes in. That's where the tricky part comes in, because then you have the failed expectations part. And I would argue that some of these are worse if your team is expected to be good. If your team is expected to be bad and they lose 5 in a row, you might be able to just let that roll off your back and say, that's no big deal. We're supposed to be bad. Bring it on. What about a 10-game losing streak? Why not make it 20? The opposite of Moneyball. We're going to 20. You don't hear fans yelling that, 14 losses. We're going to 20. But that's where it gets kind of tricky, and that's something that I know with misery indexes, when I'm trying to keep this as formulaic as possible, that's what can trip it up, is the idea of an expectation. And if I can do this for Vancouver, if I can come up with a formula for Vancouver, if I can come up with a formula and say, all right, I'm going to go from 80, 81 all the way through until now. And what's even better is that when I'm looking at it, I can go by seasons. So I can say their index total for 80, 81 was, say, 30. Their index for 81, 82 was a negative 10 because they went to the finals. This kind of thing, right? And go year by year and then give a total. So you'd have seasons, you'd have totals. But once I've done it that way, I might even be able to go through and let's say monthly, because who doesn't love charts? I love charts and graphs. Go through monthly and say, you know what? Vancouver has a good time in October historically, and in November historically they're bad, and go through. And again, it's not straight wins and losses. Straight wins and losses, that's simple. If I wanted to do this just simply, it would just be wins or losses. Not all losses are created equal. If you're a Ducks fan and you watch them blow a 3-goal lead for 2 games in a row, that loss didn't feel the same as one where they lose 6-1, where you go, all right, I'm out. Second period, you can go, hey, what else is on? But when they're ahead 3-0, you're kind of like, hey, maybe things are looking up. Oh, this is why we can't have nice things. Oh, we're back in the tank. So, and again, if you're a fan of the Ducks, you might be looking at this season and saying, hey, it's a lost season anyways. So the more games they lose, the better. We get a better draft pick. What's that about the draft? Oh, it's a crapshoot. Damn it. So the idea of doing this monthly and doing it by seasons, I even got a 200-page notebook from my wife with graph paper. And I know people are going to say, why don't you use like a chart? And why don't you do an Excel spreadsheet? Because Excel spreadsheets, I look at them, I may update them. I had a job working in a call center where you had to use Excel spreadsheets, and I hated them. I couldn't say, you had to update it all the time, and it was like, oh, I gotta use the Excel spreadsheet again. All right, and I'd update it, and it was accurate, it was correct. I'm not a big fan of Excel. Not a big fan of spreadsheets in general. And if I'm staring at the information on a computer screen while I'm copying it off of a computer screen, my eyes are going to glass over, and about 10 games into however many thousand worth of hell I'm putting myself into at this, I'm going to just say, forget it. Forget it. And there isn't really a way to do this, or you can just computerize it. Just there's a formula, and here you go. Because I want to look at blown leads. Because I also, if you're going to drop points, I want to look at comebacks. I want to say, you know what? This team blew 3-goal leads that year, but they had 5 games where they were behind by 3 and they came back and won it. That was pretty cool. And then we could use that information, and you could use it for other charts, so then it doesn't even have to be a misery index. You could look back at that and say, you know what? This also measures their consistency, their reliability. And so there's a lot of information here. I know some of it I can get through the NHL records from year to year. And then as you go further and further and further back, eventually the records become a lot less reliable. And so, yeah, I think it would be fun to do this. And of course, then you've got playoffs and you add all that in. But if I do this for Vancouver, and I'm intending to, I basically mentioned this on Twitter, and I was serious about it. I want to get into the whole misery thing because I know it can come across that sometimes Shannon's really negative about, whether it's Vancouver or certain teams. But there's that experience you have where you've watched this storyline, you've gone, oh, okay, so this feels a lot like the mid-'80s. Oh, okay, this feels a lot like the late 90s. I know how this works. Oh, we're going to do the 07, 08 thing where we collapse. Cool. And so that's that familiar feeling that'll come across when I'm doing reviews and previews. And I do start laughing about it because, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen this story before. And I think it would also, this is another thing that would be interesting, if I can get a database put together of this. So once I've got it all down, and then I can put it into a computer. So I want to do it all on paper at first or something along those lines. If I have this, then you can compare from year to year. So I could do like power rankings every week, and then say every third or fourth week, we can look and go, hey, how miserable is this year compared to regular years for these teams? hey, this team's off to a slow start. But historically, they've been off to slow starts as part of their whole shtick. And then I can measure these things day to day as they happen each season. And we can start looking at, and I don't even have to call it a misery index at that point. We can just call it something else. I think it's ambitious. I think it's a lot of information. This is the kind of thing that would be fun to put on the THG website. And once it was done, absolutely, I would be 100% in favor of putting up some sort of a spreadsheet once it's done, once all the information's in there on the THG website. And then, I think that would be really something interesting to have up there. A measurement of misery or of which teams are most frustrating to watch kind of thing historically. And again, since I started watching hockey in 80-81, and once you get to the early 80s, the information on these games is pretty readily available. Plus, I have hockey yearbooks, annuals, and all the hockey books I could ever want. I've got a whole dresser full of them, and then I've got a whole bookshelf here and half a bookshelf here, and then I've got books even in our room that are hockey related where I can mine plenty of information. I think it'd be fascinating. But here's the thing. Here's the question. How do you measure it as a fan? What makes you most upset when you're watching a game or a series of games? And what would be a stat that would either add to your misery or drop it? Where you go the next night and you go, you know what? We won that game. And you know what made me feel better? Was that the goaltender saved 40 out of 41. Something along those lines. Like, yeah, the goalie was great. So maybe one of the things that could drop points would be a goaltender stealing a game. So I could look at save percentage and say this team was outshot by 15 shots that night. The goaltender put up a great save percentage. Therefore, the points drop. But again, once I start getting into the weeds of this, there's so many different aspects of this that it kind of becomes daunting. So I wanted to do a video. Look for feedback from all you fine people out there watching on YouTube. And let me know your thoughts. And yeah, I think that could be a lot of fun to have sort of a database where we go, yeah, so this, and not only that, but don't even think of it as the misery side of it. Since I'd be doing all 31 teams, you'd also have certain fan bases going, so we always feel the best. And here's why we're Pittsburgh. That kind of thing. Or here's why we're usually Detroit. Not so much lately, but usually Detroit. I think it'd be interesting. And not only that, but then you could get into which teams have performed well and don't have a cup, which teams, their fan bases have traditionally measured poorly on this, but they have Stanley Cups. There's a lot of ways to go with this. So I think there would be tons of videos that would come out of it once it's done. It's a matter of getting it started and, again, figuring out exactly the criteria for measuring all the points. Because the misery indexes I do, they take roughly a day or two to put together. This is obviously going to take longer than that. This is going to take a while. But I do think that at the end of it, it could be really interesting. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.